Good morning. Happy Monday. How are you today? I hope that you're doing great. This is next to the last week of school. Can you believe that already? Today we are reading Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. It's by Diane DeGroat. Listen, there's a very important lesson in this book. I'll show you some pictures first. There we go. Aren't they cute? Gilbert was having a bad day. His class had been reading stories about famous people, and now Mrs. Bird wanted them to make a play to show what they had learned. Gilbert didn't want to be in a play. He was sure he would get nervous and make a mistake. Even worse, Mrs. Bird stuck him in a group with Know-It-All Philip and Bossy Margaret. Let's do a play about George Washington and the cherry tree, Philip suggested. Okay, said Margaret. I'll be George Washington. I should be the president, Philip said, because I'm the best student in the class. I said it first, Margaret insisted. Gilbert just wanted to be the cherry tree so he wouldn't have any lines. Mrs. Bird settled it by writing the parts on slips of paper and having them pick each pick one. To his surprise, Gilbert picked George Washington. Margaret picked George's father, and Philip was the cherry tree. See, this is Gilbert right here, if you didn't already know that. Mrs. Bird opened a big box of costumes. You can practice your plays now and share them with the class tomorrow, she said. She gave Louis a tall black hat for his role as Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Patty wanted to be Sally Ride, first woman in space, so she got a motorcycle helmet that looked just like it could be part of the space suit. Mrs. Bird handed Gilbert a three-cornered hat. When Gilbert put it on, he felt better. Maybe he would be a good George Washington after all. There she is with her helmet. See all the pictures there? Okay. During practice, Gilbert pretended to chop trees for firewood. Then he chopped at Philip's leg. Philip said, "Ow," and dropped to the floor. There's Philip. Margaret came up to Gilbert and said, "Oh no, my favorite little cherry tree has been chopped down. Tell me who has done this horrible thing." Gilbert held up his paper axe and said, me? That's not the way it was in the book, Philip said. You're supposed to say, I cannot tell a lie. I cut down your cherry tree. I'm sorry. Margaret added, and then I say, because you told the truth, I will not punish you. Philip sighed. I still think I should be George Washington. There we go again. For the rest of the day, Gilbert practiced his lines. At lunch, Patty asked him what kind of sandwich he had, and Gilbert said, I cannot tell a lie. It's peanut butter and jelly. There they are at lunch. Look at the next picture right here. During math, Mrs. Bird asked him to add 6 plus 6. Gilbert said, I cannot tell a lie. That answer is, what is it? 12! Of course it is. Gilbert wanted to practice at home too, with the hat. When no one was looking, he slipped it into his book bag. There we go again. Gilbert wore the hat to the supper table and announced, I cannot tell a lie. I'm starving. His sister Lola said, Me too. Try the soup, said Mom, passing him the bowl. It's a new recipe. Gilbert took a spoonful and said, I cannot tell a lie. I don't like it. Lola put her spoon down and said, Yucky soup. And Gilbert said, I cannot tell a lie. Lola is a big copycat. Lola started to cry and Mother said, That's enough, Gilbert. But it's the truth, Gilbert said. Mother sighed and said, Sometimes it's better to say nothing than to hurt people's feelings. Gilbert groaned. It was hard being George Washington. See, his sister's pretty little. Before getting ready for bed, Gilbert carefully tucked his hat into the backpack so he could take it back to school in the morning. He didn't want Mrs. Bird to notice it was gone. He took a bath and brushed his teeth, repeating his lines over and over so he wouldn't forget them. When Gilbert walked to school with Patty the next morning, he said, "I've been practicing my part, but I'm still nervous about making a mistake. I just know that bully Lewis is going to laugh at me." "I promise not to laugh if you make a mistake," Patty said. And Gilbert said, "I cannot tell a lie, Patty. You are a good friend." There they are walking to school. When it was time to get ready for the play, Gilbert opened his backpack and reached inside. He felt his spelling book and his notebook, but he didn't feel the three-cornered hat. It was gone. Just then Margaret said, "Where's your hat, Gilbert? It's not in the box." Gilbert said, "I didn't take it." Margaret said, "I bet Philip took it. He wanted to be George Washington." "Philip," Gilbert said. "If it wasn't in his backpack, someone must have taken it, and it must have been Philip." "But I didn't take it," said Philip. "Liar," shouted Margaret. "Liar, liar, pants on fire," Gilbert sang. Lewis heard him and said, "What's on fire?" Frank said, "There's a fire?" Patty ran to Mrs. Bird shouting, "The school's on fire!" Mrs. Bird said, "I didn't hear the fire alarm." "But that's what Frank said," Patty replied. "It must be true." "I heard it from Lewis," Frank said. "I heard it from Gilbert," said Lewis. "He said something was on fire." Gilbert sighed. "All I said was liar, liar, pants on fire." And Philip said, actually he shouted, "I did not take George Washington's hat." Mrs. Bird opened a shopping bag. "Here's the hat, Gilbert. Your mother just brought it in. You know you weren't supposed to take it home." "Oops," Gilbert said, turning red. "I was going to bring it back." Margaret pointed her finger. "You lied about taking that hat, Gilbert. Philip almost got in trouble." Oh my, how do you think Gilbert's feeling? How do you think Philip's feeling? Gilbert turned to Philip and handed him the hat. "I'm sorry," he said. "You were right. I'm not a very good George Washington. You should have the part." But Philip handed it back, saying, "It's okay, Gilbert. You said you were sorry, just like Washington." "My beard itches," Lewis complained. "Are we going to do our plays or not?" As each group did their play, Gilbert grew more and more nervous. When Patty the astronaut tripped over her space boots, Lewis and some of the other kids laughed. Gilbert didn't laugh. He knew he might mess up too. But when it was Gilbert's turn, he said his lines without a single mistake, and that's the truth. Let's think just a minute about the lesson in this book. What do you think it is? We always tell the truth. But if those words are going to hurt somebody, then we don't need to say it. Okay? We don't need to be mean. We're not mean people. You've heard me say that quite a few times. We're not mean people. We're very nice people. So we treat others like we want to be treated. But, you know, Philip was getting the blame for taking that hat, and he didn't take it. It's wrong to lie. There are consequences for lying. You always tell the truth. But remember, if your truth means you're going to hurt somebody, then don't say it at all. Keep it right there inside your head. Now, that was a very good lesson. So, last lesson you learned about Daniel Boone. Today, we are talking about crossing some mountains. Now, let me show you my little map. Didn't print out very big at all. Okay, let me show you where those mountains are. Okay, this is Oklahoma. Okay, this is the Appalachian Mountains, around where the 13 colonies are, close, right there. Now, people had to cross these mountains to go west. This direction is west. This direction is east. This is north, and this is south. Okay, those are called cardinal directions. We've talked quite a bit about that, haven't we? Like Mrs. Frieder goes north on Peoria. Remember, you've heard me say that. So we've got to, how would people get across those mountains? We're going to learn how that happened. How easy was that? How do you think that would be? Now, Daniel Boone, we talked about him. Daniel Boone was a very good hunter and a woodsman. That means he lived in the woods. He worked in the woods. He wanted to go, and some other people did too, a lot of other people. He wanted to go west. I showed you what direction. Let me show you again. What direction is west? It's this way. Had to go over those mountains. But it was, like I said, it was difficult. Let's look at some vocab. Passes. Say passes. That means you go through something or you pass by something. If you pass somebody in the hall, that means you went by them. Passes, when it deals with mountains, means the way through mountains. Okay? Our next word is pioneers. Pioneers who are people who explore or travel to unknown places or study unknown subjects. Pioneers. Here's our example. The girl and her brother pretended they were pioneers in outer space. People who haven't been there before. Here's our next word, trailblazer. It's a compound word. That means two words put together, remember? Excuse me. A person that blazes or makes a trail through unknown places so others can go behind them. Here's our example sentence. A trailblazer led a group of settlers through the forest. And our last vocab word is wilderness. Say wilderness. That's an area of land that has many wild plants and animals and probably not any people. Here's our example sentence. When the woodsmen went out into the wilderness, they saw plants they had never seen before. Now, the people who were living on this side of the mountains didn't know about what was west. They just really didn't know. So remember, a trailblazer is a type of explorer that goes first so that others may follow. One of the most famous trailblazers was Daniel Boone. We're going to learn more about Daniel Boone and the Appalachian Mountains. Now here's your job. I want you to predict whether he will make it over the mountains to go west. Okay? Listen carefully to see if your projections are correct. And I will see you tomorrow. Remember, Mrs. Frieder loves you. Bye.